I want to welcome everybody today to the press availability being provided by LaRouche PAC. And what we're here to do is to have a conversation 2 weeks before the November 3rd, 2020 election. Many people were, shall we say, brutally awakened last week when Facebook and Twitter sort of revealed the world that we can expect in a post-November 3rd condition of a Obama presidency called the Biden-Harris presidency. Perhaps there are those that wish this did not appear to be, quote, partisan, but let's just take a look at where we are as of last week. We now have a process that's underway of the suppression of fundamental information and the First Amendment. This was done in a kind of simultaneous way, a precipitous way last week. And it's time for people to wake up as to what's actually occurring there. Now, there are many things we're going to discuss here. We're going to get right to it. I just want to say a couple of things about how we're going to proceed. So we are going to hear opening statements from J. Kirk Wiebe, former senior analyst at NSA. Bill Binney will also be with us in a little bit, National Technical Director of NSA. And Barbara Boyd is here from the legal staff of LPAC and also has been writing various things, most notably the pamphlet that was done on Bob Mueller. Robert Mueller is an amoral illegal assassin. He will do his job if you let him, and a series of other articles and so forth. So we're just going to start right away. Then what will happen is we're going to give various of you who are with us the opportunity to ask questions. We've gotten a few written questions because there are some people that cannot, for various reasons, be with us at this hour on Zoom. So I've got those. I believe also in a moment I'll be joined by a co-moderator, Diane Sayre, and that way we'll be able to go back and forth. So what I want to do is first let Kirk start us off with an opening statement, then we'll follow it up with Barbara. So Kirk.
Good morning, everyone. Let me start off this morning by saying we're in a civil war. It's already started. Civil wars don't typically begin with gunshots. They begin with vehement, visceral disagreements about essential things. And at stake at this point in our history is what we want to be as a country. Will we be a constitutional republic? Can we keep it? Do we cherish freedom of speech? Mr. Speed just now described the fact that we've seen some of the most blatant censorship take place in the last days. And it's only going to get worse. It's not going to get better. The government processes take too long. We don't have long. We don't have a lot of time if we cherish and treat as a premium the knowledge the American people are due in order to make an informed decision when they vote this election. I hate to think how many votes have already been cast. I think it's in the millions. It may be upwards of 10 million already, without the benefit of the truth being known by one of the two candidates for president this year. What we see going on is information warfare. When censorship takes place like this, it's not just a mistake. It is part of a orchestrated plan to deny truth and to control the message, thereby controlling people's thoughts. So be alert, be watchful. These are dire times. We have to take the challenge seriously. Dennis?
Okay, thank you. Okay, so Barbara?
Most of what's happened to Donald Trump since November of 2016 has been part and parcel of what I have more or less come to think of as a lawyer's coup d'etat. And that's a very specific reference for me in history, because few people realize, they think that Adolf Hitler seized power in Germany by force of arms, or that's how coups happen. In reality, coups come out of both an effort to change a culture and a dominant culture, and the machinations of an elite force which thinks that it can control public dialogue and control public mind. The chief author of the coup in Nazi Germany, which was preceded by a Reichstag fire, if people remember their history, and the orchestration of the idea that the Bolshevik hordes were going to basically invade Germany as a result at any second. And if you know your history, you know that the Reichstag fire was staged. It was a staged event to produce precisely that result. The chief author of the ascension of Hitler to power was a lawyer, a guy by the name of Carl Schmitt. And he thought about this a great deal, and he said, the way you can actually cause a complete shift in a culture is in what he called the law of an extraordinary situation. In other words, you attack all of the norms of a society. In our case, it's the Constitution. Germany had a much more weaker constitution, was not the product at all of our Constitution, which really rests on the shoulders of 1,000 years of Western European history, the best of Western European civilization. And essentially there was an article in that Constitution called Article 33, which Bill Binney has referred to, which basically said, under extraordinary circumstances, we just throw the law out. And we can basically have a new type of law. And, Schmitt used the Reichstag fire incident as the basis to lawfully put Hitler into power. It wasn't like a violent revolution or anything like that, but it was a revolution in thought. And to me, it bears eerie similarities to what we're facing with this so-called cancel culture today. The first thing that happened after Hitler was installed in power is that the German criminal code was completely revised, where objective acts used to be punished, i.e. someone gets robbed or someone gets raped or someone gets murdered. The whole Constitution was revised to punish thought crimes. A whole new area of law was defined called thought crimes. If you thought about things errantly or wrong, you could be prosecuted for it. In addition, the Hitler regime in its initial formulations was democratic. In other words, what was said to the German people and what actually happened in the first couple of years of the regime was, we're going to govern by plebiscite. You guys can actually go out and vote on certain measures. And sure enough, because all information was controlled, people, in effect, put on their own chains. They voted for it. So I leave you with that idea of a lawyer's coup, and I hope that it strikes certain chords out there in the audience as to what we've witnessed over the past 4 years. It is a coup by the elites who despise the working classes, who they consider to be, quote unquote, in Hillary Clinton's words, echoed by Obama, the deplorables. It is a revolt by professional classes primarily. You have James Carville, for example, saying yesterday that he wanted the billionaires to mount the barricades. And that is, in effect, what's going on here. So that's my opening statement. I think there's a big chance, if the vote is mobilized and mobilized massively, if what is about to come out in terms of the corruption of Biden actually circulates widely within the citizenry, and we're going to have to depend on self-organized activity to do that, I think there's a big chance that we can turn this election. And if we don't, I can only say, God help us. So that's my opening statement.
Okay, thanks a lot, Barbara. And now we have Mr. William Binney with us. You're there, Bill, and we're all just
Hello?
doing opening statements. Great, so go right ahead.
Well, from my point of view, I mean, we really are facing this district of corruption down there in D.C., where corruption is a standard, and people seem to be accustomed to that being the thing that's the norm. And so the fact that people are corrupt and looking down at the rest of us across the country is nothing to be, is basically accepted in that community. And for us as a people, we have to stand up against it, like Barbara was talking about, the Germans and how they should have stood up against the Nazis, but they didn't see what was coming. Well, it's clear to us what's happening here. These people are totally corrupt and have nothing but disdain for the rest of us in this country. All we are is cannon fodder for them to use whatever way they wish. Well, we need to stand up and say, these people, for what they've been doing, need to pay a really big price. In my view, we need to stand up and vote as many of those people out as possible so they realize the effect of what they're trying to do. And then we need to follow up by prosecuting them. We cannot simply allow them to get through without being held accountable for what they've done. They have to be held accountable. Otherwise, the same thing's going to happen again. If we don't hold them accountable by putting them in jail for the crimes they've committed, and I have a whole list of the crimes right here that I wrote down and have read off publicly and I'm not a lawyer, but those are the crimes I recognize, the kinds of crimes they charge whistleblowers like Julian Assange. They make up things for us. These, they don't have to make up, they're really doing them. So my point is, if we don't also get someone in to replace Barr and Durham, who are slow rolling this, holding people accountable for the crimes they've committed, we also need to do that and get them out of the way, get somebody in who actually will do the job and charge people and indict them for the crimes they've committed. Otherwise, our country's just going to continue down the drain. We're never going to fix the problem. It's going to be with us for X number of years ahead until sometime in the future when we decide we have to really face it, and not get into get into a situation where we have to have a major war or something to kind of reflect on and then go back and clean up our act. This is just insane. To me, we need to fix it by this first starting with this election, and then we need to ensure that we get people in the Department of Justice will actually prosecute these people for the crimes they've committed.
Okay, very good. So what I think we'll now do is go right to the Zoom platform. Let me just explain to everybody who's going to be seeing this, be involved. We've got various questions which are written, and we have some people who I think are on the connection. Diane Sayre is here to do a co-moderating with me. I've got a couple of written questions myself. Diane, you probably have one there or two. But if there's somebody that's in the Zoom, I understand that we have one person with their hand up.
I live in Sarasota, Florida, and ironically, the Carvel Madeline barricade is only a few streets away. But I digress.
I'm not hearing anything.
Actually, some years ago, the FBI found 80,000 files pertaining to 9/11, and as far as I know, thus far they have not been released. But only a year ago, in South Florida Sentinel, they reported, quote, "How can you explain the federal government's continued stonewalling about a Saudi Arabian family that abruptly abandoned their Sarasota homes less than 2 weeks before the 2001 terror attacks?" That went on to say that in a legal battle begun in 2012 by the Florida Bulldog website, which is run by noted Florida investigative journalist Dan Christensen, the federal government continues to resist. It says releasing some 80,000 pages of FBI files on the Sarasota investigation would endanger national security and expose sensitive law enforcement techniques and sources. The article went on basically to say poppycock. The tragedy of the 9/11 was hardly a shining moment in our nation's national security apparatus. Federal agents didn't descend on that Sarasota home until after it had been abandoned. If their sources and techniques were good, then how did the nation's worst terrorist attacks happen on that watch? And I'd like to further just add that much of the problems with the surveillance state arose after the passage of the Patriot Act, but clearly there was also a problem before. And then afterwards, all the surveillance didn't stop terrorism. We know that families of Iraqi veterans filed a case in 2014 in Brooklyn, alleging that several big banks financed terrorism. Additionally, the HBC, Hong Kong Shanghai Bank, for example, was shown to have laundered hundreds of millions, if not billions, to Al-Qaeda drug gangs in Mexico and Russia, etc. So going to my question, is this present situation, what can we do over the next 2 weeks before the election to get people to realize that if the same Obama-Biden administration that covered all of this up forced the FBI to release the 80,000 documents, get returned to power, we will never be protected from the possibilities of something even worse than 9/11 occurring.
Yep.
Okay, who wants to take it? Bill, you want to start off?
Sure, I'll start up. I mean, to my point of view, I think she's hitting it right on the head. I mean, that is the issue. And the key here is very simple. The president has the authority to declassify anything and push it out in the public domain, just like John F. Kennedy did with the U-2 photographs of missiles in Cuba back in the 1962 Cuban Missile Crisis, and also what President Reagan did after the shootdown of the KAL airline over Sakhalin Island by the Russians. He exposed the Japanese recordings of the Russian ground controller ordering the fighter to shoot that airplane down. And he did that in the United Nations. Now, that just tells you the capabilities we had back then. Now, so everybody around the world in the intelligence communities of different countries around the world, they all know what the techniques and approaches are, where you're trying to get information off the internet, off the phone network, off all of that communication systems. That's all well known around the world by the intelligence community. The people who don't know are the people who are the citizens of the different countries involved. They just don't know what their governments are doing. But exposing it doesn't jeopardize anything, because everybody already knows what we're doing, and what we know what they're doing. So it's not a secret to the intelligence communities around the world. So the point is, the president has the authority to declassify anything that's an evidence of a crime, and that's what's in Executive Order 13526, Section 1.7. You cannot classify, maintain classified, or not declassify any evidence of a crime, corruption, fraud, waste, abuse, and several other things. But all of that is in there and on the web, and the president has that authority already. And there's nothing he can order the director of the FBI, director of NSA, director of CIA to declassify and expose to the public anything he wants. And if they don't do that, he also has the authority to fire them for insubordination, not following orders. So I would say that that's what the president should take that authority on. He's already got it. He can take that and order these things to happen within 2 days. And if they don't, he can fire these people.
Okay. Kirk, you want to add anything?
No, I think Bill, both the caller and Bill, hit the nail right on the head. We need people who will take action. They already have the power. And so you might say that we're about to choose a president. Frankly, the existing president could pick up the phone and order Barr to declassify everything associated with 9/11 or whatever, Hunter Biden. I'm hopeful that's happening, but I don't know that it is. And we've got very little time. So the real answer to the question is, we have to put people in office who will use the powers that they have for the common good.
Yep.
Okay, Barbara, you want to add anything?
Well, I think that's the answer. I mean, the point is, look at the swamp in which all of this battle that we're engaged in is actually taking place. The president was impeached for even mentioning the Biden corruption on a telephone call to the president of Ukraine. Just think about that. He, the president of the United States, just mentioned something about Biden in terms of Ukraine with the president of Ukraine, and he was impeached for that. And a great many people in the public said, oh, because I don't like his tweets, and because, it seems to be the common view of what this guy is, I'm really not going to look at this in terms of what's really behind it. So there's a saying, which is personnel is policy, which Bill and Kirk are both referring to. The issue is you're choosing Trump. He's the only possibility you have. It's very clear what Biden would be. And what you have to think about is, okay, what happened to General Flynn? The enemy realizes clearly that personnel is policy also. What was General Flynn going to do? He was going to clean this up. That's what he said he was going to do. What happened to him? What you basically need is you need people with intelligence, courage, lots of guts, willing to basically say, I'm taking a stand and this nation is more important to me than life itself. There's not a lot of people like that in President Washington. What he's got to do is he's got to recruit a whole new team in the transition, and he's got to have a plan, which I would suggest he discuss these guys for. He actually discusses it with General Flynn, and he says, okay, here's how we're going to both clean this up and get this prosecuted. Now, there's hurdles to overcome in terms of prosecutions. You have courts which, feed on this corruption. It's a deep thing which has gone on in this country, since World War II. You have, in our movement, in which we've witnessed things which are fairly extreme. I have actually had the experience of walking into a judge in chambers who was on the perennial call fixing a case which we were actually involved in, and that was in 1980. Okay, so what happened to Lynn and LaRouche in a certain way was a precursor to a much more wide cancer that has grown and metastasized deeply. There was a TV series called Brain Dead, which actually hypothesized that there were these space aliens who came down into Washington, D.C. and just took people over and turned them into a corrupt cesspool, and you didn't really know who was on the right side of anything. That is our present situation. And what we have to do is we have to turn out a massive vote. We've got to encourage the intelligent people in the population to think seriously about going into public service. We've got to think seriously about, who's going to be recruited into this new group that we're assembling. And it cannot be anybody who's, there's a certain logic. I didn't used to like the whole idea about term limits and this type of thing. Now I've come around to the view that anybody who's presently serving, at least in the Senate, should ultimately be kicked out over the next 4 years. I mean, it's just, they're impossible. They're had. So, it's a major movement which we've got to launch here, very similar in history when Kurt refers to the Civil War. We really are like Lincoln, looking at how the heck do we reconstruct this country at this point coming out of this election. And if Trump loses, how do we actually go into a form of resistance which will actually save the country? And that's the kind of thing which we've got to start thinking about clearly right now. We've got to stop reacting, in other words, to what is going on and start planning how we're going to successfully defeat it.
Okay, so I've got a couple of things I want to say just in terms of announcing it. So what we're going to do here is we got about 45 minutes, approximately 45 to 50 minutes. And now we're going to sort of announce the order so everybody's ready with their questions. I think Sally may have a follow-up, I understand. And then we've got Sean and then Ann in that order. And we go to Daniel after that. That's just so everybody has that. So Sally, Sean, and Daniel. So Sally, if you've got a follow-up, go ahead.
Yes, and I'll make this one a short one. I suspect, that a lot, your audience, understands these issues, and not certainly to the detail that all of you do, but it's a lot of speaking to the audience. What can we do as the audience to try to get this message out? Will there be an excerpt of this that we can then just flood the airways with?
Yeah, well, what we're going to do is we're going to excerpt what we have here exactly. And maybe Barbara will have an added thing, because we have a notion of a certain kind of social media campaign that we want to, in fact, enlist everybody in today. I should also say some of the people that are going to be asking questions or who wrote in questions have their own platforms. So, Barbara, you want to make any comment additional?
Sure. You hit it on the head. That's exactly what we're going to do. We're going to take excerpts, the most powerful excerpts, and the best questions, which you just asked a really good one, and we're going to excerpt it and run short videos out into social media to actually get this point across deeply to the population. It really is dependent on people at this point coming forward, changing what they're doing, realizing that the country's actually at stake. And there's no more sunshine soldiers, as they say.
Okay, very good. So Sean is the next one, I understand.
Yeah, can you guys hear me okay?
Yep, you're coming through fine.
All right. Hello, Bill. Bill's been on my show before with Harley Schlanger, and I want to just acknowledge Daniel Estulin, who helped wake me up to how this world actually operates, and Tim Canova down there in Florida, who had the election stolen from him by Debbie Wasserman Schultz, in my view, and the media was silent. So I want to back up what Kirk said. We are in a civil war, and I promise to be brief here, but I'm going to make a point. We're in a civil war, and real people are being taken out. All right? No shots have been fired, but real people are paying a price. I was recently deplatformed after 10 years of being on YouTube as a YouTube partner. My channels, both of them, were terminated along with dozens of others. I also just want to say, as it relates to what Sally said, national security, it seems to me that time and time again the term national security is used to protect the deep state, the shadow government, to keep things quiet. And Kirk, you said Trump should declassify. He could declassify all 9/11 documents. Well, he just did that. He asked all Russiagate documents to be declassified. And who's preventing that from happening? CIA, Gina Haspel. So,
also,
well, Donald.
FBI.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Out campaigning for his father, Donald J. Trump. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Well, Trump Jr. is out campaigning for his dad every single day. Joe Biden's son, Hunter Biden, has gone into hiding. Why? Because the MacBook he dropped off for repair at a computer repair shop in Delaware,
That's right.
and which Hunter subsequently abandoned, has revealed details in the form of thousands of texts, emails, and photos, which reportedly prove that the Biden family is a crime family. All right? And John Paul Mac Isaac, the man who was in possession of the laptop that was abandoned, so then the abandoned laptop became his property after an amount of time, has so little faith in the FBI that he cloned the hard drive and gave copies of the hard drive to two friends and to Rudy Giuliani. He feared for his life. That's the nation we live in. Now get this. There's a letter that has been signed by 50 former senior intelligence officials who say the Hunter Biden laptop scandal has all the classic earmarks of a Russian information operation providing no new evidence, while they remain deeply suspicious that the Russian government played a significant role in the case. On October 14th, I reported about Hunter Biden's laptop and many of the things on that laptop. And on October 15th, my channel, my 10-year channel on YouTube, two channels, in fact, both in good standing with 745,000 combined subscribers built over 10 years, was torched. It was suspended, terminated, along with dozens of others in the truth media space, including X22 Report, who had 1.2 million subscribers between two channels. Here's my question. How can we possibly count on a fair election or a fair count after the election if this is the reality of our situation?
Okay, who'd like to take it? Kirk, you want to take it?
Yeah, I'll simply say the question is a good one. And the answer is frightening. With 50 states in charge of their respective election systems and no significant improvements made that I'm aware of, and I've researched this and I've read commission reports by the Brennan outfit and by a group of university presidents that were asked by the Federal Election Commission to study the state of the integrity of voting in the United States, they also said it's in horrendous shape, but nothing's been done. The federal government is almost powerless to order the states. So we have a dilemma. How do you marshal good people in 50 states to do the right thing? That's the dilemma. You know, this country is full of freedoms guaranteed by the Constitution. And yet, every time we contemplate an issue, it's like there's nothing you can do right now. Everything has a long lead time. Trump just announced that he wants a special prosecutor to look into the Biden affair. Do you know how long it will take just to pick a special prosecutor? I don't know how to get people in hurry up mode, giddy up mode. I don't know what to call it. But, you know, when you have an emergency, act like it. This country has an emergency, and I don't see anybody acting like it. So I guess I'm venting frustration more than giving any simple answers.
Okay, well, Bill, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to add one thing to that. Kirk and I and others have put together a paper that we sent to all the Secretary of States of all the states of the United States, saying that we had a way to help improve and validate the voter rolls, the voting, the entire process, and we'd be glad to discuss that with them in the hopes that they might do something. And so far, we've heard from none of them. Zero have returned any response to our letter. So it's clear that they aren't really in a position or inclined to even try or to initiate any corrections that are real.
Okay. Barbara, you have any comment, or should we continue?
Well, I think that you have to take a look at this as a military kind of operation at this point. And the only way that you can guarantee anything in this election is to really look at what they're doing. I don't know that we have that out and exposed enough fully. There are 600 lawyers basically employed on the Biden side at this point. The claims which they're making is that they've got things all under control. I think that has to really be put out there and exposed. What do they mean by things under control? What are they talking about? How are they deployed? And the second thing that you've got to do, which is really critical to defeat vote fraud, particularly in the states which are going to matter. And that's a very critical thing to think about. Okay, there are states which really matter, the battleground states in terms of the electoral college. That's where you focus your examination. And you have to have an overwhelming and massive turnout. And people have to be conscious of the fact as they're voting that they're going to take steps to make sure their votes count, i.e., how many people do I know in my neighborhood who have voted for Trump and the other candidates that need to be voted for in the states today? Are those people willing to come forward if it comes to it and actually say that that's indeed what they did? You have to organize a massive, massive vote. That's if it's close, then it can be. If it's within 10, 20 points, you're talking about, the huge capability to manipulate, which we see right now going on with all of these crazy early voting ballots floating around in a sea of craziness. So that's the only thing I can say. Massive vote, know who voted for the people, be willing to come forward, and figure out and expose what it is the other side is presently doing in a huge way on social media. Put the spotlight on these 600 lawyers. What are they doing?
Okay, very good. So I believe we have Ann next and then Daniel. So can we bring Ann up?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Good morning, everybody. Thanks so much. First of all, I still do have a platform on Steel Truth on YouTube. It's small. It's just about 30,000 subs, or just getting there at the point. I feel horrible. We're trying to bring a light to anybody that's moving to other platforms. So if you are like Sean, love your stuff. by all means, if you're somewhere else on Rumble or turning up on any other platforms, by all means, let me know. We'll have you on and help promote it, like I'm doing with Red Pill and all the others that are being deplatformed. And I'm surprised I still have a voice, because I've been deplatformed before. So for whatever reason, I haven't shown up on the radar. But to the end, that what we're talking about here is so vital to organizing people so that we can be mobilized. I'm just curious on the ability to turn the machine around on these people, the weapon that they've used to spy on the Trump campaign and everybody who's been affected by it, including the entire country who's been psyoped by this criminal organization. Isn't it, at what point are we able to turn the machine around on them and, secure 702s, get the FISA warrants, and prove that this is what they've been doing? Is it literally a matter of we just don't have enough members in the army that can be be used to expose them properly? Because I see it coming out in the news regularly. We're all reporting on it. So why not get that, clean documentation and put it out there? And at what point do we just say, hey, this is worthy of a tribunal? This doesn't need to go through the, Department of Justice necessarily. This is true treason. And I know you're asking for patriots to stand up, but I can't believe President Trump has been this successful to date, despite everything he's had against him, without there being a small enough army that can help facilitate some of this. And is it truly a matter of just having enough nerve to pull it off?
Yeah.
Bill, do you have anything?
Well, excuse me. I certainly agree with everything that Ann just said. I mean, and I think that the swamp is really deep and quite numerous in terms of the population is so entrenched in this. I'll cover up for you, you cover up for me. We keep this process going so everybody's happy, at least in the swamp. The rest of us pay for this swamp. We're the ones who are taking the brunt of what all the crimes and things that they're committing, and the basically swindling of all of us. So I agree. He's got to find people who will actually stand up to this swamp and actually get in there and do something. Right now, he's got people like. It seems very clear to me that Barr and Durham, they're slow rolling this issue until the election. So if President Trump is reelected, then they might be forced to follow through with indictments and so on, which they should be. Right now, it looks like they don't want to do that. That's the problem. We need people in there who will say these people committed crimes, therefore we indict them and charge them and let them have their argument with the judge in an open court where we can all see the evidence of what they've been doing. But until Barr and Durham actually stand up and do something, the population in the DOJ is also so corrupt. I mean, they created lies about us and tried to charge us with crimes. But the point is, we caught them at it, and they ran away. So, but we aren't. We at least had some idea what the intelligence community does and the corruption involved in all of it, and so we had a chance of being able to defend ourselves. But the rest of the population of this country doesn't really have the opportunity. Look at what they did to General Flynn. I mean, he wasn't. I guess he trusted the system, which is something you cannot do. These people are so corrupt, and you cannot talk to FBI agents because of what they've been doing. If they don't like you and they come and talk to you, and then they'll find some way of charging you with some process crime or something just to get rid of you. So you can't trust them. You have to have your witnesses and lawyers and everything with you when you talk to anybody in their organization. Also, this is true with the FBI, CIA, and NSA, the main three agencies that are involved in this. These are the ones that were involved back with Nixon and all the way back to World War II with the Shamrock program and so on, spying on U.S. citizens. I mean, and they say publicly they're going to be using the NSA data against U.S. citizens for crimes. Well, that goes both ways. All this evidence is in the databases of NSA to charge them with crimes, and we should use it just like they use it against us.
Then my next
Okay.
follow-up question, if I may be so bold as to ask, with respect to the corruption in our judiciary system, while President Trump has been successful at getting a lot of federal judges appointed, we're still falling short. I mean, you look at the lower courts, just look at CPS courts, the family courts, it's completely corrupt. It's a court of iniquity, not equity at all. It's a den of iniquity, in fact. Is there, at some point, we want to talk about the fundamental problems just of our court systems, period, because it seems to me that they're highly illegal just in the structure on the face of it all. I mean, the entire, I mean, do you see where I'm going with this? We have a complete fundamental problem. Our entire platform of what our judicial system is based on is wrong from the word go. So if we're going to have this discussion, we've got to go there. In addition to getting back to a platform discussion, mobilizing people requires us to be on the same platform, which is why I haven't left Twitter as long as they'll have me, but I'm spreading my seed in other places like Cloud Hub and Rumble and any other, BitChute, all these places you've got to be, but we've got to be able to figure out how to get patriots aligned in some place, in some other form or fashion, and get that out as quickly as possible. Is there any push in any one direction there so we can start to have these more detailed discussions?
Who wants to take it? Barbara?
I think we've got to see, we've got to force the issue in terms of people putting up the money to actually create platforms like Parler and other things like that that actually have, an open advocacy of free speech. Regarding the corruption in the court system, you've got to get into the law schools. You've got to catch the problem of the education of these people. Critical race theory is being taught and was evolved from law schools, law school faculties. And this is a problem of the education of lawyers. A lot of the difficulty is they are not taught to actually, for example, in criminal prosecutions, Sidney Powell describes the overall policy of the Justice Department, which she says is a license to lie. The legal license is a license to lie. They don't police themselves. They basically are in a system where, they think that they can compromise your life away. They don't fight, most of them, particularly if you're a criminal defendant, you'll find that. And so you've got to basically begin a process of demanding a real education in the Constitution of the United States, in the Federalist Papers, as the primary thing you're talking about to lawyers in law school, not critical race theory, Marxist ideology, or all of the other stuff at this point, which goes into, surprisingly and shockingly, legal education. If you look at the Justice Department and you look at the voting patterns of the counties where all of these people live, you'll see exactly what the problem is. This is a rabidly Democratic enclave here in the suburbs of Washington, D.C. This is, essentially what Bill Barr is dealing with is there's not a lot of good conservative lawyers who actually believe in the Constitution itself or believe in the Constitution as Hamilton saw it. So we've got to do two things. One is we've got to get alternative platforms, as you say, up and running. We have to take apart the monopoly which exists with Silicon Valley at this point, and actually, it has to be gone after from an antitrust standpoint. There are other things I'm sure if people were thinking about that they could actually figure out ways of attacking this. And we've got to actually hit the fundamental problem, which is lawyers are trained to be sophists. It's as simple as that. And they're trained not to actually search for truth in any adversarial proceeding, but to win a conviction at whatever cost it takes.
We're going to go to Daniel, then Joe, then Tim. And Daniel, we're asking that you might want to have to unmute. Apparently, we're having a little bit of a problem before getting your audio.
Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, you're good. You're good.
No, I'm not doing anything at all. It's the computer itself is muting me. I guess they don't want to hear me. So this is a question for Bill. Every time I hear something and I like it, I write it down. So I'm paraphrasing a bit, Bill. But you said, I don't remember exactly what you said. If every young person in America in the G7 were to learn how to do encryption, we could drive the deep state crazy with millions of encryption systems. I don't know. Yeah. I can't remember when you said that, but I really liked it. Although it is probably impossible for a digital system to have complete integrity, we need higher integrity systems than we have now. So my question is, how can we get there?
Well, it's going to take education, the education of people in this area, just to get. I mean, a lot of this can be really a lot of fun if you. How creative can you be? That's the whole idea. This is what would drive them crazy. Okay, if it's that everything would be a different idea, or you'd have n number of ideas, and they would have to deal with each one independently. And their computer software looks for a certain understanding of how encryption systems are developed, So they look for certain things. So when you throw in all these different ideas, and these are twists of thought and different ways of doing things, then all those programs just fail. Okay. So that means they have to devote people to go look at each one in each case individually to try to figure out what somebody's doing. And then they can figure out what the rules should be on how to decrypt them and so on like that. But they have to do them one at a time. Now, if you've got thousands or tens of thousands of these things to look at, you never get through them. And if people simply keep changing every once in a while, like every half year, they change to a new system, they think of a new way of creating something,
Right,
and then they
right.
do that, then it would just drive them insane. So,
Well,
What
you
about
clearly, wait a minute, you clearly see that the artist. I don't, Daniel, I'm not going to interrupt you. If you have a follow-up, go ahead. But that is very intriguing idea for young people, particularly
yeah,
who
yeah.
are on the internet all the time.
And on top of that, it's a lot of fun. If you start thinking about these things, how creative can you be? This is like, your mind is totally open. You can do anything you want.
Bill, what about for young people, that is analog codes and ciphers?
Well, codes and ciphers. Analog is like probably safer today than digital because the digital age is in and everybody's focused on that. So, if you went analog, like if you became a ham operator, that would really cause them a lot of problems too. So, it's really a throwback to old technologies. Every once in a while, mixing things up makes it difficult. The more things you have to face, the harder it is to deal with. So, all of these things are possible and certainly available now, and people could start doing them, and they're more secure, I think, than a lot of things that people are professing to be secure now, which aren't, by the way.
Right. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you. Okay, do we have Joe now?
Yeah, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, great. Yeah. Putting on this call, I really enjoy all the discussion today. Bill, I'm a big fan of yours, and so it's nice to just listen in again on what you have to share on me and all of you as panelists. So thank you so much. I'm with the Gateway Pundit, and we get around 2 million hits a day now. So we're growing while the rest of the news is just failing. And obviously there's a big market for the truth. And despite all the attacks from Facebook, we had 30% of the volume before the 2016 election. Facebook, it's down to like 3% today. Despite that, we've doubled in size since 4 years ago. So a lot of headwinds that we're facing, but the truth is greater. So appreciate the opportunity to ask a few questions. I guess my thoughts are with yesterday's announcement from the FBI. They come out with this news that they've indicted another 7 Russians. Again, another phony, just really total BS indictment again. We saw this back during the Mueller gang. Call them a gang because they're not really a team. They're a gang, a mob, really. And where they did the same thing with twice at least, identifying Russians, which will never be in the U.S., which will never be indicted. We don't even know if they're real people. And so a couple of things maybe I could ask the Bill or whoever. One thing we noticed in yesterday's indictment was that they show the pictures of a couple of these guys. Now, that these guys are agents, like, it'd be very difficult to get their pictures. So one question would be, how realistic is it that these pictures of these individuals, first of all, that they're even actual individuals? So what's your bet on that? And that then these pictures are actually associated with these individuals, that they're even accurate? Second of all, would you consider this influencing the election? We heard Barr say he's not going to do anything before the election, but then we have this, and I don't know how this couldn't be considered influencing the election, because they're trying to grab some credibility again with Russia, and also at a time as Biden's under a massive attack here with these emails that have come out. So that, I guess the other thing too, kind of related to all of this, really, it seems to me the biggest question and puzzle from the Mueller investigation is related to how this started. Did the Russians actually interfere with the election to the point where they were hacking, and then we're told that they moved this information to WikiLeaks. We know that isn't true now from the testimony from CrowdStrike. So the big question still, I think, remains, and maybe I'd get your thoughts on this, if this is the big question you have in regards to Mueller, et cetera, is it, who gave this information to WikiLeaks, and why are we still messing with Russia at this point in time? And it seems like a lot of people are aware of this, but maybe I just get your thoughts on all of that. Thanks a lot.
Okay, good.
Well, I think if I could take that one.
Sure.
First off, the forensic evidence on the data that WikiLeaks published on the DNC emails clearly shows that it was downloaded. The evidence is there to say it's downloaded to a storage device, a thumb drive or CD-ROM, and physically transported before they published it. So, I mean, it wasn't hacked, in other words. And that's basically what CrowdStrike's CEO said in testimony to the House Intelligence Committee. Secondly, the idea that Russia is now the big bad guy in the corner here is a standard technique used by totalitarian states. They create an external threat to take focus away from the internal problems that they've created or the crimes they've been committing. That's fundamentally the process that's going on here. And every time you notice, if Russia doesn't work, let's try Ukraine. If Ukraine doesn't work, let's try China. If China doesn't work, let's try something else. The idea is the evidence is not there to show anything other than an inside job. So, and the point is that's what Craig Murray said. He met somebody in the American University campus in Washington, D.C. that was involved in the transfer of data. That's what Kim.com said in public. It's on the web. You can go listen to what he said. He said he helped somebody get data to WikiLeaks. And it wasn't a government, it was a person inside. And then Julian Assange basically alleged to that in an interview in the Netherlands shortly after the email started coming out. I mean, all of that is evidence from people who were involved in it, saying that it wasn't hacked. It was basically from a non-state source. So, I mean, all of that says that all this other stuff is simply a camouflage, a ruse, a way of trying to divert. I call it the Wizard of Oz operation. Look over here, pay no attention to what I'm doing over here. Keep the curtain closed, don't look at me. So all I'm trying to be is a little Toto, go over and pull the curtain out. See this really evil person here doing all this stuff? This is what they're doing. This is the reality of it. So that's a standard tactic that has been used down through millennia. I mean, because it's a diversion. The cause of diversion. It's a sophist technique to divert attention away from the true criminality that they're doing.
Okay. Any other comment? Kirk, you want anything to say, or just leave it at that?
No, I think the question or the discussion about the validity of the FBI accusing 6 or 7 Russians and producing pictures, I would bet you they were manufactured. The FBI knows there's no way for any news agency in the United States or citizen to verify any of that. And so I would be highly suspicious that it's fake news.
Can I add something to that? Let me add something. I forgot to deal with that, but one of the possible sources for this is like most of these agents who are involved in intelligence are attachés around the embassies around the world. So they spend tours in different embassies and so on. So you get pictures of these KGB agents or colonels or whatever they are in different embassies around the world. You get their pictures. So once you accumulate all their pictures, you have their names and photographs and so on file. So then anytime you want to accuse somebody, you already know the organization, where they are, and because they're not in other countries or they're back in Moscow or whatever. So you charge all the guys back in Moscow so that you know that Moscow is not going to let them out of the country. So you're never going to be able to try them. So they'll never come to court. So you can't challenge anything. The mistake Mueller made and Rosenstein and all the DOJ died, the mistake they made in their indictment was they talked about the IRA, the Internet Research Agency in St. Petersburg, a company. They accused that company of being an agent of the Russian government. And so that company sent lawyers in to challenge that in court here in the United States. And when they did, the government just totally failed. They had no evidence whatsoever that they were involved. All they did was, and in order for them to escape the obvious the falsification of evidence in a court of law, the only way to escape it says, well, that's national security, we can't tell you. And that's just an outright lie. You know, they're not keeping that secret from anybody except we, the people in the United States. So, you know, this is the way they could get those pictures, and you know, because there's countries all around the world do this. So.
Okay. So, all right. Barbara, you have anything, or should we just continue?
John Demers needs to be fired. I mean, you know, he's the guy who's orchestrating this at the Justice Department. It's clear that it comes from what we've learned about what happened with WikiLeaks. It's very clear that this is coming from the CIA. And, you know, it's once again Gina Haspel trying to cover up her own perfidies and participation in the coup against the president. I think it's pretty simple.
Okay, so now we've got Tim, I believe. Yo, good. You're right there. Hi, we can't hear you. Unmute.
Thank you. I appreciate it. And I just want to start by also saying how much I appreciate what Bill Binney has done. As someone who had, as you know, ran against Wasserman Schultz in a primary, we kind of smelled out the rat from the very beginning, and just from our gut knew that everything she was spinning about Russia was a complete lie from the beginning. And when Bill Binney and others came forward with the forensic evidence, I just so much appreciated it. Our experience has been a very tough one. We thought we beat Wasserman Schultz in 2016. We had an enormous field operation, 4 field offices, and all of our field numbers showed us crushing her at the end. And when she won by 13 percentage points, I did not concede. Instead, I asked to see the paper ballots. And that led us down a long road where I had to file a lawsuit after months of trying to work cooperatively with the Broward Supervisor of Elections. While the lawsuit was pending, the supervisor, Brenda Snipes was her name at the time, destroyed every paper ballot in violation of state and federal criminal laws. The judge ultimately, Florida Circuit Court, this is in a public records case, granted us summary judgment. We got lawyers' fees, but nothing else. But he wrote a 10-page order that slammed the supervisor for violating all kinds of state and federal laws. And we thought at that point we'd get a criminal prosecution. We had her sworn videotape deposition admission to what she had done. And my lawyer talked to the acting U.S. attorney in South Florida. He seemed very eager to prosecute. We're handing him an open and shut case on a silver platter. He goes up to Washington, D.C. for a week of meetings at the Justice Department, including with Rod Rosenstein, comes back, long and short of it, no prosecution whatsoever to this day. And these were Republicans at the state and federal level covering for Democratic election rigging. So, you know, I look at the Justice Department and the FBI as captured agencies. You know, political scientists talk all the time about captured agencies. We know who would capture the FDA. It would be Big Pharma. But who would capture the Justice Department and the FBI? Organized criminals. What agencies are engaged in organized crime? You know, just connect the dots. I'm a law professor, and I'm going to have to duck out of this call very soon. I'm actually teaching First Amendment law. We've been covering Section 230 of the Community Decency Act and how to hold the big tech tyrants accountable. So it's just an incredible time to be teaching the First Amendment, one is absolutely in shreds. And I agree wholeheartedly with what was said about the miseducation at law schools. I think it goes way before law school. I saw when I was working on my second campaign, I ran as an independent, and they rigged that again. So blatantly, the the computational science experts said the results were as unlikely as winning the lottery every day for a year. But during that campaign, the Kavanaugh hearings were going on, and one of my young, loyal campaign workers who had been with me from the start, a millennial, he said to me, "You got to put out a post, a message slamming Judge Kavanaugh." And I said, "Well, this Blasey Ford has not even testified yet. How do you know what she said is true?" And this is somebody who had not been to law school. He's a college grad. And he said, "It doesn't matter if it's true, if it's going to hurt Kavanaugh." And that's the ethics we're in. And I'm saying, by the time students get to me and they're in law school, there's so much they don't know. They have no idea about the church committee hearings. The church committee report of the 1970s. Operation Mockingbird, none of this. It's been airbrushed completely from history. So, that's about all I've got to say. I just want to say how much I appreciate what you're all doing, and I'm in 100% agreement. I'm somebody who had been a lifelong Democrat, and at this point, God help us if Donald Trump doesn't win a landslide. And I know what's at stake, and if there's something I could do in the future to work with any of you, I will say there's a 4-year statute of limitations on a prosecution of Brenda Snipes, which brings us to September 1st of 2021. I'm still hoping there will be justice done here in South Florida. This is a cesspool here. There's a corrupt machine, and it completely controls our politics here. And I know it's not any different here than anywhere else. So okay. I just want, again, I'm sorry to rush off real soon, but I thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Right,
Thank you.
Okay. Great. So we'll just go. Thanks for being on, Tim. We have Dave is the next one I think I announced, and I understand Joe may have a follow-up question. So whichever one we can do, if Dave's ready there.
Can you hear me, Dennis?
Yes, we can.
How you doing? Hey, Bill. Okay. Hey, Kurt. How you doing?
Yep.
The question I have, it's actually a 3-part question. It goes back to the time of 9/11 and right after that. And I wanted to get clarification on what my understanding is since around that time, there has been a harvesting, illegal, unconstitutional harvesting of all American text messages, emails, cell phone communications, and web searches. I want to know if this is accurate. I don't believe that most Americans are aware of it. If it is accurate, I don't think most Americans would stand for it if they thought it was accurate. And if it is accurate, where is this material being stored? And Bill and Kurt, I know that you worked on the thin thread. How would thin thread in the state or the sophistication that you devised for it improve the situation so that people's the constitutional rights were being protected?
Okay, well, first of all this data is being collected and it's being stored. That's why they had to build this 1 million square foot storage facility in Utah, because they were running out of the storage they had at Fort Meade in San Antonio and Fort Gordon, Georgia, and various other places around the country and in fact around the world. So they have a distributed set of databases so that all of this data be stored there, and then they do a distributed query just like Google does and pull the answers back together and sort them out and present them to you. So that's where it's being stored. The collection system I've been tweeting about is mainly the Fairview program. AT&T tap points on the fiber optic lines where they actually capture the entire line, everything on the line, and it all goes to selective bases. They don't store, the standard TV stations being piped down the lines, but they do store everything else that people are communicating, the emails, chatter, all of that kind of stuff. And the British are open about doing it too, and cooperating with them through the Five Eyes program. That they called that internet connection records. They wanted to capture every internet connection record of every person in the lines, and they've discussed that. I testified to the House of Lords on that, and at least they're being open about it. Over here, we're lying to our public about it. The government's lying to you. They copy everything. In fact, one of the agents involved in this program, the federal agents, said, "This is such a great program. I just hope we can keep it secret." Well, it's because they're violating the constitutional rights of everybody. And that was reported by Reuters back in August of 2013, I believe it was. All of that is being collected, is being stored in various places. Fort Meade, Utah, that big facility there. There's also a 600,000 square foot storage facility in San Antonio, Texas. In Denver, they have another one in various places around the country. And it's there basically for at least since September of 2001. And that's when they really started it. And I've been tweeting about that under @Bill_Binney. And if you want to go see it, you can see the map and the overlay of the fiber optic lines with the microwaves and the tap points and all of that for AT&T. I also have that for Verizon. Blarney's another program they use internally in the U.S. That's about 28 other, includes about 28 other telecommunications companies and so on. So yeah, it's a massive capture set of data, and they even talk about using it against people for a common crime inside this country. Well, the point is they should understand that's a two-way street. It's captured all the criminal activity of all the people in government too, all of them. All this stuff about the emails in the FBI or anywhere else, that's all captured too. So all of it's there to be used against them also, and that's what we should be doing.
Right. And with regards to the thin thread Kurt was going to say something. With regards to the thin thread program, how would that, if it was set up the way you intended it to be set up, how would that protect people's freedoms?
Yeah.
So, well, let me take that one, Kirk.
Not really thin thread. It has to do with protecting the information of innocent people, basically encrypting it so that people couldn't play with it and browse it. And that kind of thing. I don't care if they were GCHQ in the UK or at NSA. And that was one of the principles Bill incorporated into thin thread, was to make sure we sorted the data, to make sure that we didn't even collect meaning viewable by any intelligence analyst, the data of Americans. The NSA promptly ordered Bill to take off that constraint so that it could be viewed by anyone. And you know the history since then, and now 16 agencies have access to the NSA database and can peruse it. I mean, it's just outrageous what's happened. So the answer to fixing it is Bill will join me in assuring the American people that mass surveillance can be conducted such that the data of innocent people, and I'm not just talking Americans, I'm talking about somebody who lives in India or some foreign country. Why bother analysts, which have a fixed number, they're a fixed resource, with a bunch of data that has no utility, no practical utility to anyone in mankind except for personal things? The government has no business collecting that data. So why do it and eat up the cost of the taxpayers to store it somewhere, et cetera? Now, NSA would tell you, well, what if a bad guy sneaks in somewhere and we missed him, and suddenly he's sitting in your backyard? Well, you know, you could say that of law enforcement. You can say that about anybody, anywhere, and justify a tenfold increase in police so that we can have a policeman in everyone's yard to protect you. This is just ridiculous rationale. It's irrational, in fact. So anyway, I wanted to say that using encryption, you can encrypt the identity of everyone in the world that is innocent, and they will still show up in a map of connections. The connection information comes from the email metadata. Who sent whom an email, a phone call, who called whom, et cetera, et cetera. I don't care if it's Instagram, I don't care if it's Twitter. All of these things have addresses and can be linked one person to another. So as you build this out for the world, you encrypt the innocents and you decrypt all the known bad guys, so that if an innocent is hiding and it's really a bad guy, it will show up in the communications. There'll be a persistence. And then you go to a court, an Article 3 court, and say, Your Honor, we use this persistence factor. This person visits this person in email every other day for the last month. Don't you think that's probable cause under the Fourth Amendment to uncover the identity of the person we thought was an innocent person, at least for purposes of further investigation? Any court would okay such a thing. It's definitely evidence of probable cause. So that's how it would work. That would not be expensive to do. It is the solution to bring mass surveillance more in line with the constitutional intent of justice in this country.
Dave, I'm going to ask you to not do your follow-ups just because we have two other people, but I want you to do the following. Can you just tell people what you do so that that's at least known? And I've got a couple other people. I think we've got Sonia and Joe. So if you can just sort of do a summary here. Tell us who you are.
Yeah, I'm the president of the Lawyers Committee for 9/11 Inquiry, and we're doing a litigation in New York City right now. We're trying to get a grand jury going. We have a grand jury petition there, and the evidence we have is this positive controlled demolition in those buildings and bombs. There's a lot of evidence to support that. If people go to lc4for911.org, we just submitted a congressional petition to all congressmen, and it has to do with the reopening of the anthrax investigations. We've done an 8-month investigation. We have quality information on our website. There are some exhibits that have never been publicly seen. We made contact with scientists at Fort Detrick, a number of them, and 3 of them are former Army colonels. We've talked to Richard Lambert, who was the head of the Amerithrex investigation, some of the top scientists in anthrax in the country. So that you can go on to lc4for911.org and see that petition that Congress has now. This is brand new. They're just receiving it. Some of them maybe have received it today, others yesterday. So that's what we're doing. We're trying to open up an investigation to the crimes of 9/11. In particular, I'm here because Kurt and Bill and the work that they've done to try to free our country up and try to help people understand how they're being taken and how the country is being destroyed from within, and to make us all more vigilant and to correct and push back on the situation. So thank you for having the program. And again, thanks for Bill Binney and Kurt Wiebe being so patriots. And also yourself, Dennis and Barbara, too, for being true patriots and trying to get to the root of the problem and just have a rebirth of mankind in this country and throughout the world.
Yeah,
Okay.
amen.
Yeah, thanks
I'm sorry,
a lot.
but I have to go now because I have a doctor's appointment, okay?
Yeah,
Sorry.
I know. Yeah,
Bye-bye.
Exactly.
Yep.
Okay, so I think we've got Sonia and Joe. Is that right? I know Sonia, we're trying to bring her up on an audio.
She may be having issues with her camera, okay. So go ahead.
Let's go to Joe then, if we've got him.
Yeah, just a quick follow-up question. So just your thoughts, is Bill Barr a good guy, bad guy, and your support for your answer?
Who?
Let me
go ahead, Kirk, and then Barbara will say something.
Let me just, I had an immediate reaction because I've thought about this myself. I don't think we can say that Bill Barr's a good guy. Here's why. Bill Barr was in the George Bush administration when the mass surveillance began. So he knew about it. And I think if you're a principled person and you swear an oath to protect the Constitution, you stand up and you say, wait a minute, mass surveillance subverts the Fourth Amendment of the United States, and you do something about it. I'm not aware that Bill Barr did anything along those lines, or anyone else for that matter. There may have been private discussions, but obviously nothing was done, and he certainly didn't make the case to the American public, who is the customer of government. It's not the other way around. The other point is Bill Barr has had the obvious opportunity to bring certain facts to light for public consumption involving Russiagate, and has not done so. He had no personal compunction, apparently, to inform the American people about what he knows about crimes committed to support Russiagate. And I don't understand how a person in the legal field, let alone the Attorney General of the United States, can get out of bed in the morning with a clear conscience, go to work, and participate in a cover-up, because that's what he's done. So I would say the evidence is against Barr in that regard, unless something happens between now and November 3rd, which would change that perception. But that's the perception I have.
Okay, Barbara, you have anything you want to say?
I have a slightly different view. I don't condone what it is he's done. I think that his positions on a lot of things are not my positions. He's a fanatic about the death penalty. He's a fanatic about other things which are the views of the Washington, D.C. establishment. And he is, despite his history, a long term member of that establishment. That is where the problem actually lies. The question really is, to me, whether this thing can be forced by the population. Lawyers, even very good ones, very often talk themselves out of the moral position. As I said, they're trained in a certain way in sophistry. I think what he says about himself, he has taken a great deal of abuse. He is, kind of Genghis Khan as portrayed in the media, almost as much so as the president himself at this point. And, his background is everything that Kurt is talking about. I mean, his basic idea when he was a kid was he wanted to become a CIA agent. He spent 6 years at the agency. He was the agency's counsel. He then went on to not a good career within the Bush administration. The only thing that I can say in his favor is that people change the times and people change the profiles. And I tend to think the fact that he, caved obviously to a Justice Department in rebellion against him, and actually said, not until after the election. I probably would have thought that that's where it was going to go anyway, simply because what his primary concern seems to be is saving the institution, when you have to question whether the institution can even be saved without a complete, total, revamping of the entire thing. And that's where the problem lies. I think the thing that speaks in his favor is that he has a very firm view of both the Constitution and civil society's relationship to the Constitution. And he basically says in his favor that he thinks that the primary problem here is that this corruption has spread into the population itself. We no longer we have a secular religion, he says, which is true, called politics. And it is no longer the religion that actually teaches people mores and how to go about living a life in pursuit of the good. So, in my view, the obviously he's a coward at present. The question really is, can you deliver a mandate through the election which forces him his hand and actually delivers on what these guys have already found? I suspect that a lot of what is going on here is that every time they pick up a rock, they uncover a whole new variety of crimes, which they hadn't known was there and hadn't anticipated because the elites in this country have blinded themselves to their own corruption. So that's my view. I, would probably join Kirk if something doesn't happen very rapidly after November 3rd. But it's a complex picture in my view.
Okay. Okay. I think we have a final, rather written question, but Jose is going to read it, and we can bring him up.
Yes. Hello. Can I be heard, first of all?
Yes. Yes, you can be.
Okay. You won't see me because I don't have access to my camera, and my hair is a mess.
Maybe a related problem.
Especially for a fashion plate like you.
Bad hair day.
But first of all, I want to say that this comment, it's more of a comment than a question, but I will tack on a question at the end. This comes from one of the moderators of the board, Our Conspiracy. And this was a board that reached out to us when William Binney was censored doing his first AMA on the subreddit IMA. That was the 20 million subscriber, the official one where everybody pretty much goes, celebrities, doctors, whatever. He was censored off there. He was removed and completely deleted. It was terrible. Anyways, they reached out and we had an AMA on their board, which was very successful. It was a lot of fun. And so I asked one of them to write something in. So this comes from from a moderator from that board. And this is what they said. I am one of the moderators from r/conspiracy. And I am also a long-term user, 12 years at Reddit. Lately, I have been very active as a user as well as a moderator, featuring several posts highlighting the news from the New York Post, dealing with the Hunter Biden laptops and the silence and/or distortions coming from the mainstream media, which are clearly focused on concealing or diminishing the importance of the materials found on the laptops. I really don't feel like I can vote for either of the two main candidates in the upcoming election, and I did not vote in the 2016 election either. This notwithstanding, I do take a very active role at Reddit, in both as a user, contributor, and as a moderator. We are at a critical time in events both in the USA and around the world. Fortunately, we have the internet and are not constrained by the mainstream Western media, as many of us have named it, for information about this very complex and dangerous world in which we live. Our ability to talk freely about things, to discuss them, is the only possible way in which we can help to make things better. Please do include me in your digital Rolodex as a very concerned, nonpartisan 71-year-old American who feels that exposing the many conspiracies which affect our lives is the only reason we can even dare to hope that we can work together to make things better than they are. Please continue your participation at Reddit. It is very much appreciated. And I will just tack on one more thing here, which is, Kirk, would you like to get on a future AMA with Mr. Binney on the conspiracy board? When we did it originally, we had right now there's over 1,100 questions that are unanswered. And we would like to do it again with you and Mr. Binney on board. So
let me say, if I can just interrupt for a minute, because we're at the conclusion in terms of time, so there can be kind of summary statements. Now, Kirk had a very sharp response to this sort of line of thinking last night. I'd like him to respond now to this as we wind up, and then we'll go to Barbara for final remarks as well. So, Kirk, go right ahead.
Yeah, the gentleman who wrote that, the Reddit moderator, was eloquent in trying to tell us his belief system. But it threw me when he said, I am probably not going to vote for either candidate. Now, that's clearly his right. But if you're talking about beliefs and principles, the difference between Joe Biden and Donald Trump when it comes to the U.S. Constitution is night and day. It's a progressive view versus a textualist or constructionist view, which basically means Trump believes you ought to interpret the Constitution the way things were meant when the Constitution was written, and not changed because popularity changes over time. So I think that the choice is night and day, and the fact that the moderator values free speech but doesn't seem to recognize the one who is adamant about upholding the Constitution is Trump floors me. And it doesn't follow from what he tells us. So I would love to sit down and talk with that moderator at length to try to flesh out what's preventing him from seeing with clarity that kind of a difference between these two candidates. And yes, Jose, I would like to be part of that with Bill Binney.
Okay, Barbara?
People should get out and vote. As Kirk so eloquently said, there is a big thing going on. It's called the difference between the possibility of this republic surviving and the pure fascism, which is on the other side. There's just no comparison. And if you don't like tweets, if you're offended by Mr. Trump's Queen's personality, his crudeness, etc., that's why citizens exist. They exist to bring these ideas into action and to force the hand of the politician in Washington, D.C. And there's a genuine mass strike going on out there in the population to really overturn this stuff. And that's who's going to ultimately determine things. You have to get rid of the cynicism, which basically says we can't change things, which is what I think is at bottom why the gentleman doesn't want to vote. So that's the issue.
We are going to, I believe that's the conclusion. It's actually right 12:30, which is exactly when we said we would have to conclude. I want to thank everybody that participated. I think it was obviously very lively and so on. You've got plenty to think about. There are ways in which people, of course, can change their view, but most importantly, get out and start doing something. We have 2 weeks. And of course, there's an attempt to deconstruct the election date itself. Actually, really, the process is already underway. And that's exactly why we wanted to intervene with this today. We will be making the entirety available, but also we're going to be breaking out sections of it so that you can use these in your own organizing and your own work. But I want to thank everybody for participating, particularly Barbara Boyd, Kirk Wiebe, and Bill Binney. And you'll be able, of course, to continue to support LaRouche PAC, both financially and otherwise, by number one, subscribing to the channel, number two, giving money if you can do that, and number three, disseminating the ideas you've heard. So on behalf of the LaRouche Political Action Committee, I'm going to conclude now. Thank you all for joining this. We'll be posting on a YouTube shortly, and we'll see you next time.